everybody, and welcome to another episode of CRESI's Ontario Landlord series, where we are bringing investment strategies, tips, tricks, education, information for you, the Ontario landlord. And today we're going to talk about not something that all landlords understand and are aware of. It's a different investment strategy where technically, I guess, you're not still a landlord, but you are investing in real estate and you are working with kind of a tenant. I guess we have to figure out how this all works out. They are renting it, but it's rent to own, a strategy that I've heard about over the years, talked to a few people about, but we're bringing in a specialist to make sure that you guys understand everything about it. And David Pereira, how are you today? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Kevin, I'm good. I love the Blue Jays hat. The split wasn't exactly what we wanted after winning that first one, but we'll take it. Hopefully, we take some in LA and wrap it up in 6 or 7 back home.
I'm normally wearing a CRESI hat when we're doing this. This is probably
Yep.
the first episode that I am wearing a Blue Jay hat, but yes, it's a big game tonight. Game 3 of the World Series, just so you understand the reference there of us being 1-1 and heading out to LA. But yeah, I'm excited for the game tonight, and let's get a big win tonight, a series win, and we can celebrate all the time. But let's talk about how we can celebrate with your rent-to-own strategy. Why don't we start with a little bit of who you are, how this came about, your background, and why rent-to-own is the strategy that you landed on?
Sure. So, my name is David Pereira, live in Mississauga, Ontario. I've been a real estate investor with my wife since 2013. So, we've been doing it now for 12 years. We first started with a triplex in Hamilton. And the realtor that we used to buy that triplex literally wrote a book on rent to own 2010 or so. His name is Mark Loeffler. And he wrote a book called Rent to Own Investing in Canada. And I love the book. I love the idea of win, win, win. But just, you know what? Didn't take any action back then. I was kind of more focused on the triplex and kind of growing our buy and hold portfolio. And that's what we did for 7, 8 years. And we still have buy and hold properties. But in 2020, so COVID had just kicked in, and I'm listening to this real estate investing podcast, and I hear this woman who's a rent to own operator. And it kind of jogged my memory to kind of the book that I read. I call her that night, and within a couple of months, we had basically become rent to own investors. And what that means is we own the property. So I have the mortgage on it, we own the asset, we are renting this property out to a tenant buyer. So for 3 years, we have a contract that says they're going to pay this much rent every month and they're going to pay this extra savings amount. And that savings amount is going to go towards their down payment. And they're going to use that to buy the house back for me at a price we've already agreed upon. So everything is set in stone, everything is predictable, everything is consistent. And as someone who had been a buy and hold landlord for 8 years up to that point, I'd gone through my share of repairs and unexpected maintenance and tenant turnover and cops being called once because there was a problem, right? It's the stuff that people don't talk about often enough, but that happens on a fairly regular basis when you are a buy and hold landlord. None of that happened when I was the rent to own investor. I literally all I had to do every month was log into the bank and auto deposit the e-transfers. And there was no visit to the house. There was no communication from the tenant because the operator dealt with all that stuff. So as an investor, I loved it. It was passive. I knew exactly what I was going to make. And everything kind of worked out the way it was supposed to work out. So about a year and a half into that investment, which was a 3-year investment, I decided that I love this model. I'm just a huge fan of the win-win-win model. Everybody gets what they're looking for. Everyone gets a piece of that pie. So I wanted to be the operator. I wanted to figure out how do I create a business where I'm the operator and I do it the way I want to do it. There were some things that I would have done differently. So that's what I did. Hired a coach and launched the business about 3 years ago.
Nice. No, I agree with you. The win-win-win is definitely key here, especially if you're looking for no headache, right, as you're going through this and giving the tenants an opportunity. Everybody needs a roof over their head, and there's reasons why people can't buy, and they're all different at all different times. And I really think this is a good strategy for the right person, right? Like, I
Yep.
don't think people should stop from buying today thinking this is a better strategy. If you can buy today, traditionally, I think that makes more sense. But if you're paying somebody else's mortgage, right, by paying rent, and you can get into something with a situation like this, I definitely think it is a win-win. It makes a lot of sense for both the investor and the tenant because
Tenant
they're
buyer.
going to
Yeah.
become an owner. You were mentioning, let's talk about profitability. You were saying something that we were talking about before about a very high return with it being passive. So obviously every project's different, every situation is different, but on an average, what are people looking at putting into something, and then getting back from it?
Sure. So there are a lot of rent own operators out there, and we all have slightly different models. Some people do joint ventures. So you're literally doing a JV with an operator and you are co-owners of the property. The way I do it is I'm a property manager. So my role is property manager. I take care of the tenant, I take care of the property. So I'm really a vendor to you, to the investor, and the investor owns the asset. So using an example, let's assume we buy a house for 500,000. So we've vetted the tenant. The tenant, we gave a budget of 500K. They found a house they like with the realtor, and the investor is now going to sign the APS. And let's assume it's 500,000. So the investor is in for 20%, right? So 20% of 500K is 100K. Now the tenant buyer has to put in a down payment. We want skin in the game from that tenant buyer. We usually, at a 500K house, will probably do about 15K as their down payment. So they're in for 15K upfront, which is offset from that 100K. But then you add in legal, land transfer tax, and I charge a fee up front of typically about 3,000 to do the tenant vetting and all this stuff. So let's assume once you balance all those things out, the investor is in for 100,000. So if they're in for 100,000 and this is a 3-year term, the way I try and structure my deals is that the investor is getting at least 20% annualized return. So what that means is over a 3-year period, 20% times 3 is 60. So I'm basically telling the investor that at the end of 3 years, you're going to get your 100K back because we're selling the house back to the tenant buyer, and you're going to make $60,000 in profit. Now, the way that the investor gets that profit, some of it is through monthly cash flow. So each month, I'll send an e-transfer to the investor of, let's say, $500 a month. And that's on top of like mortgage, property tax, insurance. All those expenses are paid off. And then on top of that, the investor is getting additional cash flow. Let's assume 500 bucks, which is, and this is very standard, this example I'm giving you. So 36 months times $500 is $18,000. And if I'm promising 60K, that means at the closing, the investor is getting the remaining 42,000. And all of that we determine like before anything is signed on day one, right? All of this stuff is very predictable. Nothing changes in the model. So yeah, from an ROI perspective or the return perspective, it's 20% annualized. However, now that interest rates are below 5%, they're now you can do a 3-year fixed at a close to 4%, slightly below 4. We've been doing 22, 23, even 24% return annualized. And again, the split is cash flow, and then of course the proceeds at the end of the sale. The other thing is the way I make most of my money is at the end as well, right? So I do have a fee up front. I have a monthly property management fee of usually 100 to 150, but the bulk of my profit comes at the end when the transaction is done. And of course, the tenant buyer is motivated to get to the end because they want the house. So going back to the win-win-win sort of heading we have here, the reason we call it win-win-win is all three of us are incented to make it to the finish line.
I think you mentioned, just to circle back in case people didn't catch it as well, I think this is great. The tenant actually gets to be involved in the house selection because they're going to be the purchaser, right? It's not just, hey, we have 123 Main Street. Who wants to be the person that buys this in 3 years? It's the other way around. It's, hey, you qualify as our future buyer, as our rent to own tenant. Go out there. You have this type of a budget that we will work with you on. Go pick your property that you like, that you want to live in, and you have 3 years on a program. Generally, do you do anything longer than that, or is it typically just 3 years for an exit to make it?
My preference is 3 years. The reason for that is if I did 6, 7 years, life changes in 6, 7 years. And there's a lot of unpredictability. Now you're introducing to the equation. And my job as property manager, and you know this, Kevin, is risk management. I'm doing whatever I can to remove the risks that could enter the equation. So Standard is 3 years. If we have to extend a year for a variety of reasons, that's okay. We can do that. We can add a 1 year to the contract, and we have to do one more. If we have to roll one more year, we'll do it. But I don't want to go in starting with 5, 6, 7 years because so much changes, and I think you set yourself up for failure. Kevin, you touched upon a really important point about sort of tenant first rather than property first. So I do want to get into that because it's a core detail. So I don't own an inventory of properties. What my job up front is to vet the tenant. And for every 100 applicants I get, there's probably 2 or 3 good ones that I think will make it to the finish line. So the very first part of my job is to make sure we get the good ones. And so what that means is they have the income, right? So they've got the jobs, the stable jobs that they're going to have in 3 years so they can qualify. Their credit score is probably damaged, but what we have to figure out is why is it damaged? Is this like a long set of habits that we're probably not going to fix? Or is it a one-time event? Is there something explainable? So we look at the credit pretty carefully. Their down payment, they need to have that skin in the game. I won't do 0 down. I won't do 5K down. It's not enough. I need them to be serious. I need them to have enough skin in the game. I also need to know they're capable of saving 10,000 or 15,000. If they're not capable of doing that, they're probably not going to make it successfully to the end.
No, yeah, for
Right.
sure.
And then we're doing all the usual reference checks, like all the usual stuff you do as a property manager when you're vetting a tenant, checking out social media profiles, all that type of stuff. Once I've done that, my broker comes back and says, here's the budget they can safely afford. Right. So they may have aspirations of a $700,000 home. But the reality is, if we project in 3 years what we think they can safely do, we then have to back that up because the price today, let's assume going back to our example, the price was 500,000 today. We're agreeing in 3 years that the tenant buyer is going to buy that back from the investor at a price closer to 575, 578. We assume the market's going to go up 5% per year. And that's how we like create the profit, right? Is we are agreeing today to buy at 500K and in the future at 575.
Okay.
So we have to make sure they can afford 575 in 3 years. And so that's kind of the math that we have to do. Once that's done, and that's the hardest part, I would say, then, like I said, they work with their realtor, they find the house that they want to buy. So they're emotionally invested because they chose the house for their family,
Hmm.
right? There's a reason for them to care now. And as you've said to me before, Kevin, they have an owner mindset, not a tenant mindset. They are emotionally invested, they're financially invested, they care about taking care of their house. They care about getting to the finish line and becoming owners. And I found like in every deal that we've done, when I go visit them, like they're happy to show off, hey, here's what I've done to the house lately. Um, we allow we allow tenants to make changes to the home as long as it doesn't hurt the value of the home. They want to put in a fence, if they want to install a bedroom, they want to paint the place. I ask them to let me know. And if they need to get a permit, right? Because ultimately it's still the investor's asset. So we don't want electrical, we don't want anything that's going to potentially damage the property. But it's incredible what people do to beautify their home. And the nice thing is they're putting this money to make their home better. It raises the value, and that's equity they get to realize in the future.
No, again, everybody needs a roof over their head. We say that all the time. That's why I think real estate is the best investment in the world. This is I think a really great way, like you're saying, win, win, win. Especially with the market today, prices are going to increase. I know that. I don't know how quickly. I don't know at what rate. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know they're going to go up. And I think looking at 5%, that is traditionally something that we've always cleared or been above of, right? Like we're right in that range. So I think that is still a benefit to the tenant there. The investor is making a little bit of money for sure, but I still
Yep.
think the tenant's going to have a better win at the end traditionally over the course of time as things have always averaged out and everything like that. So you mentioned you have some long-term hold assets. I know you have some other investments as well. Diversity is king for sure. But again, we're trying to let's share, I guess, some of the realistic pros and cons that are out there between the long-term hold program versus the rent own. I know we've touched on them all, but we'll try to give it just here as a once over as well.
Yeah, so I think that there's some differences. And again, I'm not anti buy and hold. Like, as you mentioned, we've got properties. We are long term buy and hold investors and landlords. But there are some core differences. So number one is it's great returns, as I mentioned, so 20% annualized with a lot less hassle, right? You're not dealing with tenant turnover. You're not dealing with just the usual property management or landlord headaches. It's truly passive, right? So there's my investors don't hear from the tenants. I'm the operator in the middle. So it's my job to make sure that rent's paid on time, the savings credit's paid on time. And then I've got someone who goes to visit the properties, or I go visit the properties every 3 months. And so if someone's gonna be late on rent, my general rule is look, if you're gonna be late, let me know in advance so I can prepare for that
Yeah,
and
communication's
don't make it
key.
a habit. Right. So communication is very, very, very important. And that's what I tell my tenant buyers before they sign any contracts. If you pay on time, you communicate well, take care of your house, this is going to work wonderfully for you. And that's the expectation. But from the investor perspective, there's no communication to them except for what I tell them. And each month, they're getting the e transfers from me on the 6th of the month. They don't hear about any repairs. They don't hear about a toilet issue because they don't have to deal with it.
Yeah,
The contracts we have 2 contracts. We use the standard Ontario lease, but we have a second contract called the option to purchase contract, and in that contract states the expectations of the tenant buyer. In order to, exercise their option to purchase, they have to take care of maintenance. They have to take care of utilities, snow removal, all that stuff. This is now the tenant's responsibility. It's like you're a homeowner. So all that goes away, and that's what creates us to be passive. There's a built-in exit strategy. So the investor knows, hey, this is a 3-year investment. I'm going to get my cash in 3 years, and then I can redeploy it into whatever I want. Right. Whereas with our buy and hold, our cash is tied up. We can refinance, we can do things, pull out equity. But a rent to own investor is doing this because they're trying to grow their cash reserves over a 3 or 4 year period. They know exactly what they're going to get back in 3 or 4 years, and they can redeploy to whatever they want. Tenant quality. So I mentioned kind of the process I go through to vetting my tenants, and that's a huge differentiator, right? Because I know if I do my job of getting a great tenant, everything else is going to go very smooth. And so we never run into LTB issues. If we had to, we would. I've got a paralegal that I can reach out to, and we can go through that process. I've never had to do that because the tenants, like you said earlier, have this owner mindset.
yeah.
The last part that I really like about this, and it's the win-win-win, is there is a social impact. Like, we are literally putting the roof over the head of a family. We're allowing them to own, we're giving them a path towards home ownership. And we're not sacrificing profit to do this. Yes, we're taking a little bit less profit potentially. Like, maybe I could make 30% in my buy and hold. In this case, I'm taking 20%, but I'm helping someone earn a home. So those are the core differences between rent to own investing and buy and hold investing.
I love it. And again, I think this is something that helps people out, right? It makes a lot of sense for people when you find that right person that can actually do it and qualify because people have, again, their reasons why they can't buy today, but to do this in advance, in an appreciating market and things like that, again, it's a benefit to them.
Yep.
One thing you mentioned about their credit score and stuff like that, and I'm sure you're probably familiar, but Front Lobby is a great program where because it is a automated, reoccurring monthly bill, if you track it through their system, your tenants or rent to own people can actually increase their credit score simply by paying their rent on time. It's
That's part of my process. So I
yeah,
have all my plans on Front Lobby. And so,
amazing.
yeah, and I let them know, hey, this is part of what we give to you is like, you're trying to raise your credit scores. And Front Lobby is one way we do that. The other thing we do is I pay for them to be with a credit coach. So there's a credit coach I work with. His name is Richard Moxley. He literally wrote a book called The Credit Game. And on YouTube, he's got a ton of resources. And the one thing I like, my credit's in good shape. But when I read that book, I learned a ton of stuff like the utilization rates and the amount of errors that are often in your credit report. So over the course of a term, at the very beginning, my tenants meet with Richard. They give him his give Richard their Equifax reports and their TransUnion. He goes through, looks for errors. Then he writes up a plan that they need to follow for the next 3 years. And then we do touch bases every 6 to 12 months to make sure they're on track. And that way, when we get to that 3-year mark, I know their credit score is 700 or above. So there's no reason they shouldn't be able to get the mortgage, right? Like the components are the credit score, the down payment, and the income. I cannot control their income, but I can the down payment. They already put some down, and now we know they're saving. Let's say they're contributing rent plus this extra savings amount, so I know exactly how much down payment they're going to have in 3 years. The credit score I help control by putting them with a credit coach that goes up, and so at the end of the 3-year mark, I know exactly that they're ready. And then I work with them and the mortgage broker to get their paperwork to all together. So it's an easy transaction.
I like that there. I like that you're setting them up for success there and even providing them with a coach that's going to help guide them to make sure that they are getting through that. We do something similar with first time home buyers and a financial planner when they're ways away from being able to secure that first home. Hey, how do we get there? And having a
Yep.
plan. I do what I do. I know what I know, but there's other professionals out there that we want to connect you with. And I like the way you're with that as well. That's CRESI is an acronym for Complete Real Estate Solutions and Investments, and it's about being the complete solution for people through their real estate and their investment, whether it's through us or through connecting them with professionals like yourself or anybody else that is an expert in their field in their profession. So. David Pereira with Rent to Grow Homes, folks. We're going to get you his contact information. If you're looking for someone to have as a guidance, an advisor, a partner, even in such a way to help you rent to own homes. David can definitely assist you with that. Is there anything that you want to throw out there, a tidbit, something to leave our audience with today that we
Sure.
didn't quite touch on?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm looking into now is helping existing landlords that want to rent to own their properties. So it's a difficult time right now to sell, right? Because the market's down. It feels like we're near a bottom. We're not quite sure. And so starting to get approached by realtors or investors who say, hey, look, I've got this property in Brantford. I can't get market value for it right now, but I'd be interested in rent to owning it so I can get sort of a higher valuation in 3 years. Um, is that something you can help me with? It's not necessarily the tenant first model that I typically do. This is more property first, but it's actually something I have a model for now. So it's something I can help with. So if for your listeners who are investors, if that's something you're interested in, feel free to reach out. Or if you're looking for the traditional tenant first, I just want to be totally passive. I don't want to own, like, I don't want to use one of my existing properties. That's obviously kind of our bread and butter. But I'd be happy to answer questions or talk to anyone and provide information.
No, I think that's a good alternative for people right now that are kind of trying to figure out what to do because, like you said, it's a tough market to sell. And depending on what type of property it is or what's going on, a lot of people are just lowering the price to whatever they can to unload something if they
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah.
If you don't need to sell and you can hold on to it, but you're just wanting to avoid vacancy or thinking about a different way because even though with Bill 60 being talked about right now and what's coming, which we'll get into another day,
Right.
this is a good little alternative as a real estate investor to help out these tenants, potential future owners. David, thank you so much for joining us today. I greatly appreciate you sharing your experience, your wisdom, your knowledge. So, folks, rent to own, this is the guy you want to talk to for sure. He'll work with you the entire way through, which I think is great as well as the operator. So it keeps your investment passive, which is something that people don't think is often true in real estate, is to have a passive investment. So there are ways, but this is one. Thanks again, David. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kevin. Take care.
Bye for
Go
now.
Jays.
Yeah.
Please remember, while we are professionals, this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The advice shared may not apply to your unique situation. Always seek personalized advice from a qualified professional before making any investment decisions.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're finding it informative and useful, make sure to like, subscribe, share with a friend so that we can keep getting the information out there to Ontario landlords and keep on joining us. We'll see you next time.